I am currently reviewing every single episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. In this video, I'll be covering Season 4. Go catch up on my last 3 season reviews if you haven't already. It's finally time for my favorite season of this show. While there's still great stories in later seasons too, Season 4 is by far the most consistently high-quality season of this show. And possibly my favorite content in all of Star Wars, even. Seasons 1 and 2 were more strictly episodic, where story arcs weren't necessarily connected to each other. Season 3 set up an ongoing narrative for the Clone Wars, and Season 4 will push that story much further. I'm so sorry for how long this video is, but also, I'm not really. It's because I love this content so much that I probably have too much to say about it. Also, remember in my first video when I said Obi-Wan is my favorite and I'm gonna be biased towards his content? So yeah, prepare yourself for plenty of Obi-Wan related yapping in this one. Anyway, let's get into it. Season 4, Episode 1, Water War. While it isn't one of the stories important for the show overall, I am thoroughly entertained by this first Season 4 arc. Mon Cala's completely underwater civilization is a very unique setting, which makes the humans a little more in danger and out of their element. It also allows for the use of more unique technology, like those same Trident-class assault ships and aqua droids we saw on Kamino, plus the Hydroid Medusas. This episode explores the tension inherent in a monarchy system that rules over 2 different species, and the problems that arise when a young prince is suddenly thrust into power and doesn't yet know how to lead. He's supposed to be the supreme commander of the military, and while he shows as much bravery and confidence as he can, Prince Lichar is still uncertain about what to do. I like the setup that each side of the Clone War is supporting a different side in this local civil war. But it's also a bit more complicated than just good versus bad, because the Quarren leader is clearly conflicted about his decision, even without knowing Dooku and Tamsin's plan to take advantage of this conflict. All these political issues are actually more interesting than most of the action in this episode, which gets a little slow and repetitive. Kit Fisto is also too generic a character to really add anything, but it makes sense that he'd be assigned here. I don't really care about Akbar either, but again, it makes sense that he'd be here. Tamsin, this separatist shark guy, though, he is so unnecessarily funny to me. Season 4, Episode 2, Gungan Attack. There's not much to say about Part 2 of this arc. It mostly consists of cool underwater battles and more fun close-up action than the previous episode. Prince Lichar learns to rise above defeat, becoming motivated by dialogue about the power of hope, but no one says anything particularly outstanding. I like that the Republic and Mon Calamari do keep losing, so this episode ends on higher stakes, with everyone except Ahsoka and the Prince captured. I also like that Ahsoka seems very competent in this arc, and she has a nice line at the end about how she's learned not to be afraid anymore. I appreciate that they're clearly trying to develop Lichar as the main character here, so that you're more invested in the Mon Cala story, and not just whatever the Jedi are doing. It's a fresh change to see our main characters act more as side characters for a couple episodes. I actually don't mind it. Season 4, Episode 3, Prisoners. Okay, by this last episode, I think I've figured out what it is I like about this arc, even though it feels slow and repetitive at times. I think this arc is a well-contained individual story that still feels part of the larger world and the Clone War, but with specific consequences for this specific planet, and the political discussions are balanced by plenty of continually progressing action. There's probably too much talking in this episode, but in general, I think this is a pretty good plot. Victory depending on Lichar and Nosarai uniting their people is the wholesome ending you expect and want. The electric eel torture is actually a little intense. Okay, this was maybe a little too goofy though. Tamsin has a pretty fantastic evil laugh. But also he gets literally blown to bits. Oh my gosh, that's the craziest death in this show by far. Season 4, Episode 4, Shadow Warrior. Okay, I know I said this was the most high quality season, but these next 3 episodes are the weird exceptions you have to get through before the really good stuff, okay? So just stay with me here. I don't need more Gungan content, and it's never very enjoyable to watch results riding on Jar Jar of all people. And we've seen this plot where Dooku is orchestrating the conflict so many times before. It does not seem realistic, but it is kind of fun to watch the Gungans beat the heck out of Grievous. Why is this the closest the Republic has ever come to capturing him? And it has been long enough since we last saw Grievous, pretty much a whole season, that I'm kinda happy to see him again. Towards the end, however, it's Anakin's fight with Dooku and his Magna Guards that somehow makes this random episode worth watching. It's a very intense, well-done fight, and a rare moment where Anakin actually looks concerned and in over his head. I do think it's important for continuity with Revenge of the Sith that he's still not quite good enough to beat Dooku, especially after running in alone and unprepared. But Anakin is definitely better than he was in Attack of the Clones, judging by Dooku's relieved, out-of-breath expression here. This time, it's Padmé's turn to choose her personal feelings over the greater good, as Anakin has done time and time again. It's interesting to see Palpatine utilizing his knowledge of their relationship. Season 4, Episode 5, Mercy Mission. I always skip these 2 episodes every other time I've watched this show. I never really look forward to 3PO and R2 content. I like Commander Wolf and his clone squad. They're just as confused and weirded out and annoyed as I am. But they're not in it nearly enough to make a difference, cause what the heck was going on underground? I've only said this about one other episode in the show, but you know what? Don't bother with this one. Season 4, Episode 6, Nomad Droids. And one more wacky episode with these droids. While I can appreciate that this episode creates more planets and species for Star Wars, it's quite weird and feels much more just for kids, which is fine, but it's not for me. The tiny people are kind of funny, and I liked the fake-out, ambiguous perspective there, but I honestly wouldn't bother with this episode either. At this point, I'm hearing James Arnold Taylor everywhere in random characters for the last few arcs, and I need Obi-Wan back instead. He's been gone too long. Season 4, Episode 7, Darkness on Umbara. I really like the opening scene of this episode, both for the strategy talk and for the dialogue between characters that reminds you of their history together. The same history you've been watching for over 3 seasons now. It's always nice as a viewer of a long-running show to feel in on the inside jokes, and they can really start utilizing that at this point in Clone Wars. That opening scene, combined with the opening action, where they fly into battle on those transport ships, reminded me a lot of Season 2, Episode 5. And it feels like that same good old-fashioned Clone Wars action, but visually and thematically it's very different here. The dark, foggy, ominous atmosphere of Umbara is the perfect setting for probably the most serious arc in Clone Wars so far. Fun fact, the name Umbara comes from the Latin word for shadow, so the name definitely fits the vibe as well. This arc does a lot to make you love Rex and the 501st, and I think it's a very good story for what it's trying to do. This show has gone out of its way to establish the clones as individual characters, who are just as fiercely loyal to each other as they are to the Jedi and the Republic, and who deserve the same respect as any other human being. Master Pong Krell, however, presents a challenge to these themes. In this first episode, Krell is definitely rude and harsh enough to the clones we like to make you immediately dislike him. But at the end, he's almost respectful and apologetic to Rex, just enough to not give away the rest of the story. You don't suspect him of any real treachery yet, just some very flawed tactics. Season 4, Episode 8, The General. The Umbarans have some crazy tech that makes these battles more intense and just cool to watch, but the rest of this episode's content is just as good as the action. There's some really great dialogue that explores really complicated issues. It's fascinating to watch the conflict that soldiers would experience in this kind of situation. These clones must decide whether to follow orders as they've been taught, because that's the only way a good military really works, or to disobey a command when they're clearly on a reckless suicide mission, as Fives calls it. As an ARC trooper, Fives is really the one stepping up for his brothers here and calling the issues out, since he doesn't have to deal with Krell directly so much like Rex does. We see how much Rex, as captain, must bear the weight of this conflict himself, balancing the fears and hopes and frustrations of his men with the strict authority of General Krell. As the middleman between the general and his troopers, Captain Rex must figure out how to set a good example of both leadership and obedience. He's really juggling a lot here, and I think he does a great job following Krell's orders as much as possible while still coming up with his own clever plan to succeed. The swelling victory music when the boys flew in to save the day was fun. I think the tension these soldiers are feeling here is even higher than what a non-clone soldier might experience, because while they have done their best to prove otherwise, these clones were produced and designed to be identical dispensable numbers. While we have seen proof that they are more creative than droids, and truly do have unique personalities, the very fact that these soldiers are manufactured just gives Krell an excuse to push relentlessly toward victory without thought for the cost, or the casualties, rather. The other important thing this episode does, by making Krell a foil to Anakin, is make you appreciate how generous and inspiring of a general Anakin is. Fives brings up the fact that Anakin would be leading and fighting with them at the front, while Krell is always skulking judgmentally from the back. Well, this shot isn't ominous at all. Season 4, Episode 9, Plan of Descent. These episodes just keep getting better and better, cause even with less action, this is a good one. I enjoyed all the endearing humor from Fives, Jesse, Tup, and Hardcase. Dogma clearly got his name for a reason, but he's still funny too. And I understand his reasoning enough to not be actually annoyed by him in this arc. All the tension I talked about in the previous episode reaches its breaking point here. Fives refuses to follow another of General Krell's insane plans and decides to take matters into his own hands. Fives has a hard conversation with Rex, who, because of his responsibility as captain, has done all he can already and can't help them. D. Bradley Baker does such a great job voicing so many characters who have the same voice but with subtle differences, and he gets the right emotions across really well in this episode especially. You can tell Fives isn't really angry at Rex, even while they are arguing with each other. He's angry at Krell, at the situation they're in, and at the struggles inherent to being a clone. And I can really feel Rex's inner conflict when he says,
"I can't help you when you get caught."
You know for sure he was always with Fives at heart when later he tries to take the blame for their plan anyway. You really grow to admire Rex a lot in this arc, and Fives as well for shutting Rex down and taking full responsibility for his own actions. Oh, I really liked Hardcase too. His death makes me sad. At least he sacrificed himself for his brothers, and I think it's right for the story that their risky plan had consequences. Jeez, Krell's final threat leaves you with a very bad feeling about the next episode. Season 4, Episode 10, Carnage of Krell. Everything has been escalating up to the final episode in this arc, and it feels dark and intense and serious, y'all. Imagine being ordered to execute your own brothers unjustly. It was a great moment when these troopers all missed their shots on purpose and dropped their weapons. You can tell Rex is finally determined not to lose any more of his brothers at Krell's whim. Also, coldest Clone Wars moment ever, maybe?
You are making a mistake by crossing me, clone.
It's Captain, sir.
No, not Waxer! This is the first time I noticed he had the little Twilight girl on his helmet from Season 1. This is so horrible. Their faces when they realize they've been tricked into killing each other? What an emotional scene, and what a way to make them instantly unite against Krell. If Rex hadn't reached his breaking point before this does it. At this point, I think they're totally justified in breaking literally any rules, even organizing a full-on mutiny. Okay, but Krell dual-wielding the double-bladed lightsabers is pretty sick. His evil laugh, though. Nice callback to episode 7 with the Sarlacc-looking creature. This guy, though, I just can't even. Krell was clearly waiting the whole time just to gloat about his prejudice toward clones and his plan to join the winning side. I get that Rex is just too good a person not to feel conflicted about executing someone, but if anyone deserves it, it's this guy. I love that Dogma had his own arc and gets that redeeming moment at the end. Dang, this last episode is just good and engaging and high tension the whole time, and wraps up this quality arc very well. Season 4, Episode 11, Kidnapped. Finally, we have arrived at my most rewatched Clone Wars arc. Y'all, I love it so much, it's so good. So, let's go through what's great about this first episode. We see that Anakin has
struggled to put his past behind him.
As a former slave, Anakin cannot help but feel a personal vendetta against the Zygerians. His feelings about escaping slavery are not explored very much in the movies, really only in relation to leaving his mother, so Anakin's emotional reactions here add positively to his character, I think. We also learn that while he and Ahsoka have clearly grown closer, there's still a lot Anakin hasn't told her. Speaking of Ahsoka, I really love how competent and part of the team she feels in this episode. She's really matured so much, and I love seeing her and Anakin acting in sync together. Ahsoka's second, shorter lightsaber has also been a fun addition that shows how much she's developed her own unique, acrobatic fighting style. Most importantly, of course, Obi-Wan is finally back, and oh boy is he. We get to see the master negotiator at work, and it's just awesome. Obi-Wan's witty, sassy dialogue with this Zygerian is peak entertainment. The remarkable combination of selflessness and confidence it takes to let yourself get beat the heck up for the sake of the mission, love him for that. But there is a moment that confirms he's just playing along and holding back. The droid almost ruins the plan, but you see that look of recognition in Obi-Wan's eye, and he pretty easily gets Dinar off him and takes out the comm at the same time. And then just casually destroying those commando droids with the Force? Now that's the coolest thing he's ever done. By the way, you'll know again in the future that a fight is getting rough for Obi-Wan whenever that one bit of hair gets loose. I think it's a clever little animation detail. It's fun to see how in sync Anakin and Obi-Wan are as well. They're able to assume what the other is going to do without explicitly communicating. The tension of whether Anakin and Ahsoka can disarm the bombs before Obi-Wan can't distract the enemy anymore is very engaging to watch. The sometimes comedic timing of when it cuts between perspectives is pretty great too.
Let's hope Obi-Wan shares our luck.
Dart's Dinar, try saying that 10 times fast, quickly and effectively introduces you to who the Zygerians are, why they're working with Dooku, and why they hate Jedi. Important setup for the next 2 episodes. Season 4, Episode 12, Slaves of the Republic. I'm not really sure why Rex is here, cause he doesn't really say or do much in this arc, but that's okay. We haven't seen a full-on undercover mission like this in Clone Wars yet, and I think it's really fun to watch. This is also one of the first episodes that actually gets pretty mature, gritty, and intense on a whole new level. Cause geez, the Twi'lek slave committing suicide is actually dark. The truly evil atmosphere of Zygeria is very clearly established with moments like that, and you immediately get the character of the Queen by her unfazed reaction. It's so actually kind of hard to watch Obi-Wan get beat the heck up again, cause this time it really isn't humorous at all. When he's brought out at the auction, he looks so rough. But the main reason Obi-Wan is such a lovable character is that he always gets back up and fights no matter what. The man can only take so much though, bruh. Makes sense that it takes like a dozen guys to take down Anakin. That scene where they reveal themselves as Jedi and fight back is pretty epic, even though they lose at the end. They really tried to make up for, well, all of Attack of the Clones, and give Anakin some actual riz. More importantly, the Queen confirms what we all know about Anakin. The way to control him is to hold power over the lives of people he cares about most. In doing so, however, the Queen also risks Anakin's anger getting the better of him, which it almost does. Very bold of her to assume she could actually keep him under control with only her words and no physical restraint. However, the Queen's dialogue this whole episode is very well written and thought-provoking. She is remarkably observant, particularly how she points out that the Jedi are already slaves to the Republic, and that Anakin's value for his friends over his mission is not very like a Jedi, actually. I can believe that Anakin would submit to her at first, but only until he could come up with a different plan to save his friends. More than any other Jedi, Anakin is too smart, skilled, and willful to let himself be controlled like that for very long, especially since he's already experienced slavery and has plenty of determination never to go back to it. Season 4, Episode 13, Escape from Kadavo. We've had a tragic lack of Obi-Wan in this season so far, but when he returns in this arc, you can tell they've spent the time figuring out his character. This episode is so important for knowing who Obi-Wan really is at his core. As Agris said in the last episode, it's difficult to break down the remarkable resolve and strength of will a Jedi has, especially in Obi-Wan. We've seen countless times that he'll willingly put himself through hell to protect people, that physical pain alone can't make him stop or do anything, but hurting others on his behalf, that is the secret to breaking Obi-Wan Kenobi. As the Queen says, you have to convince him
that his efforts to help others will only injure them. To ease the burden of his fellow slaves, defiance will become compliance. When Kenobi realizes he cannot help those around him, his spirit will break.
Again, she really makes so many fascinating and important observations about both Jedi in general, and specifically about Anakin and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan has a natural compulsion to always do what is right, what is best and most compassionate to others. He is able to be worn down because of his principled and conscientious heart. The opening scene of this episode is one of only a few in this show that makes me actually tear up almost every time. His sorrowful, guilty expressions are so well animated. Obi-Wan really selflessly cares about people and just wants to help and protect them, and it's so sweet and admirable. I love him so much. Okay, fine. Enough about Obi-Wan for now. The Zygerian Queen has been a very quickly well-developed character with her own little arc over these 2 episodes. It's impressive that even though she's established as a pretty twisted person who wants to bring back a slave empire, her realization that she also is like a slave, powerless to defy a Sith Lord like Dooku, gives you a bit of compassion for her. You can see that she genuinely likes and wants to care about Anakin, and he develops some sympathy for her. In the end, she does earn some redemption by willingly telling Anakin where to find Obi-Wan. The first half of this episode is a lot better than the second half, I think. All the breaking out action on Kadavo is fine. Master Plo and Rex have some cool moves, and at least Anakin thought to call for backup instead of rushing in alone this time. I also love his line about Obi-Wan.
It's good to see you're always ready to negotiate.
Also, that moment where Obi-Wan can't in good conscience kill Agris because of the Jedi Code, but he can totally just let Rex do it, that feels significant. I guess Rex was in this arc for a reason. One critique here. The amount of Togrutas we see is never even a fraction as many as they talk about. The auctioneer in the last episode said 50,000, and then they just blew up the entire facility after getting like 20 people out. I just can't help but notice that one inconsistency, but I get that they wouldn't actually want to animate that many people. It just always takes me out of the ending a little bit. As I've said before, it's because this arc is so great and high quality overall that I even notice little flaws like that, which I would probably brush past in a worse episode. I've still rewatched this arc so many times. As an adult viewer, I love this more mature Clone Wars content, especially how much it pushes our main characters in all kinds of ways, physically, emotionally, psychologically, etc. The fact that they explored how you could feasibly control such powerful Jedi as Anakin and Obi-Wan shows how much they have fleshed out these 2 characters and figured out who they are at the deepest level. That's the main reason this story is so compelling to me, and why these are some of my favorite episodes in the whole show. Season 4, Episode 14, A Friend in Need. This episode continues the story of Season 3, Episodes 10 and 11. Lux is a fine character, kinda just a typical hot-headed boy, but I understand his desire to avenge his mother. It also makes sense that he can't trust either side anymore, and so turns to someone neutral like the Death Watch. They might have been betrayed by Dooku, but this episode goes out of its way to show you that Death Watch is still just as cold-hearted and evil as he is, which Lux Bonteri comes to realize. They went way too far with the village burning and slaughtering, oh my gosh. I get that the point of the episode is that Lux made a mistake in trusting them, and they're the rogue, violent Mandalorians who want power and revenge, but I don't know, I think I just want this group to be more complicated and interesting than that. So I wish they were a little more honorable here, since that is developed as a key part of their culture. I do think if the romantic tension between Lux and Ahsoka was developed a little bit better, this episode would be much more interesting. A couple shots of them staring at each other a little too long isn't enough for me. We know Ahsoka does care about Lux, but they're really just arguing the whole episode, until the last scene, which I'll admit was very sweet. I enjoyed all the fighting and escape action at the end, and Ahsoka shows off some cool Jedi skills. This is also the first time we meet Bo-Katan, who returns in multiple later Star Wars shows. There's not much to say about her yet, though. We'll get there in Season 5. Season 4, Episode 15, Deception. While mostly featuring Obi-Wan, this arc is super important for Anakin's character. It gives us another significant reason for his growing distrust of the Jedi Council, and explores how Anakin would react to the death of someone he really cares about, in this case, his master and best friend. I remember watching this episode for the first time and thinking, what? I know Obi-Wan can't die, but wow, what a fascinating story here. It's not just the Council in general that fails Anakin in this arc. It's specifically Obi-Wan. I don't really want to believe that he would agree to this plan. He certainly looks conflicted about it in this shot, but his loyalty to the Jedi Council and Republic war effort probably justified the deception in his mind. Plus, the intro announcer tells us the Council is getting desperate for intel. Obi-Wan wouldn't say no to an urgent mission where people's safety was depending on him, especially the leader of the Republic. While he would of course hate to hurt his friend, Obi-Wan explains that Anakin's genuine response was critical for the plan. You can definitely sense him trying to justify that to himself as he says it here. No, Satine crying at the funeral is so sad. Props to the animators for the tormented expressions on Anakin's face throughout this episode, and Ahsoka's expression as she holds Obi-Wan's seemingly lifeless body. Matt Lanter delivers the emotion really well too. A Jedi going so completely undercover for a while like this is such a great plot idea. They did have to come up with some crazy tech to make his disguise perfect though. I love that James Arnold Taylor got to do both voices. You can really hear it in that transition when he swallows the emulator. Shaved Obi-Wan is also so off-putting, bro. But he does look a bit like Ewan McGregor. Obi-Wan is certainly clever, adaptable, and discreet enough to be really good at this kind of mission, so it does make sense that the Council would ask him to do it. Throughout this arc, it's so interesting to watch Obi-Wan get out of tricky situations, decide when he can use the Force without outing himself, and keep his cover intact while still maintaining his moral code and never killing anyone. We see that difficulty for the first time during this episode's prison escape. I also think it's a fun detail that Obi-Wan still talks like himself when he's not putting on the very different character of Hardeen, and I really notice his quirky way of talking a lot more without the British accent. Seeing Obi-Wan's mannerisms in Hardeen's body is also really funny. I'm very excited about the return of Cad Bane. Bane is definitely smart and perceptive enough that he'd be annoyed with Hardeen and suspicious of something being off about him, which gives Obi-Wan a good challenge to deal with for the rest of this arc. Season 4, Episode 16, Friends and Enemies. This episode has so many tense interactions and arguments between Cad Bane and Obi-Wan as Hardeen. Matching Bane's stubbornness is the only way for him to stick with Evol, but it gets Bane just a little too annoyed. Obi-Wan really keeps getting himself in these kind of situations, bruh. But as the brilliant Jedi he is, he gets himself out and back on the team in no time. It's also fun that we now know Ben was always his undercover codename. This scene between the Chancellor and Anakin is very important for developing their relationship and showing us an example of Palpatine's manipulation. By suggesting that the Council doesn't trust Anakin, which he's not wrong, Palpatine steers Anakin towards rebelling against the Council and discovering the truth on his own. He praises Anakin's tumultuous emotions and gives him full permission to act on them. The final chase and fight sequence is very well designed and super fun to watch. In order to protect Anakin from Bane, Obi-Wan has to punch his friend repeatedly in the head just to try and knock him out. Oof, that was a rough fight between them. And the way Anakin's eyes widen when he and Obi-Wan connect through the Force? Yeah, Anakin is too close to Obi-Wan not to figure it out eventually. Also, Ahsoka really is the great supportive friend and loyal Padawan Anakin needs through all of this. Season 4, Episode 17, The Box. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't tell Anakin once the fake death was past. At least Yoda has clearly regretted it the whole time, admits to Anakin that their deception was wrong, and finally explains the plan to him. But he still looks so hurt. And you can definitely imagine this situation being on Anakin's mind when you go back to Revenge of the Sith and hear him say,
"More and more I get the feeling that I'm being excluded from the Council. I know there are things about the Force that they're not telling me."
The bounty hunter world is full of cool characters throughout this show. It was kind of funny to hear them each get a choose-your-fighter kind of introduction. The box contest is an engaging concept that provides plenty of fun action for all these characters. I like watching Obi-Wan have to rely on his skills outside lightsaber combat and visible Force telekinesis. His refusal to kill Eval would definitely seem a bit out of character, though it's a nice visual of him taking his mask off, both literally and metaphorically. And he's overall way too nice and too much of a team player to realistically blend in. But I guess it works out, because Cad Bane respects him enough to save him here. A solidly entertaining episode. Bane acts just like my dad playing Red Dead Redemption 2, killing people just for their cool hats. When I first watched this arc, I was so confused as to why Dooku was enacting a plot to assassinate his own master, but don't worry, we'll get some answers in the next episode. Season 4, Episode 18. Crisis on Naboo. The holographic disguises are pretty cool, with a decent visual so we can follow what's going on. It's fun to watch how the team of bounty hunters gets past the Jedi's intense security. A good final episode that wraps up the story of this quality arc and all the themes it wanted to explore. There's lots of little dialogue references to what happens in Revenge of the Sith, especially from Palpatine. I love how much this episode shows through those subtle hints how important this arc really is for future events. And Obi-Wan straight up tells Anakin it was his decision to keep the plan from him. I hate that so much, actually, which I know we're clearly supposed to. It's just such a deep betrayal for Anakin, and you totally understand why he reacted the way he did. Maybe the rest of the council pushed Obi-Wan into this, but he is literally one of them. Really a huge mistake from him here. It's very significant and a bit sad to see that if he's convinced himself it's the right thing to do, Obi-Wan can rationalize questionable things to himself. His line to Mace here,
I hope this was all worth it.
at least shows that Obi-Wan was questioning it, and even if things kinda worked out, he still doesn't feel good about it. The first time I watched this arc, I remember thinking, there's no way it's just about Anakin and Sidious predicted everything the Jedi would do, but that seems to be the implication. So, based only on the content from these 4 episodes, this is my interpretation of this arc. Palpatine knew they would assign Obi-Wan to this mission and use Anakin to make the death convincing. So Palpatine told Dooku to plan this assassination, allowed the rumors about it to spread, and he took the opportunity to feed Anakin's distrust of the Jedi Council, to test Anakin's trust in him, and to more closely observe the security planning and insight of the Jedi. And then I guess you might as well get rid of a few dangerous bounty hunters while you're at it. Plus, Palpatine seems to enjoy pitting Anakin against Dooku again, so that he can watch in person this time. to compare his current apprentice with his future apprentice, and give Anakin another chance to keep practicing against Dooku and learn to defeat him eventually. I thought this was a really well done lightsaber fight and a solid fake out in this episode's plot. Dooku does again look out of breath and a little worried at one point, but he also still roasts Anakin at the end. It's unclear whether Dooku was in on every aspect of Palpatine's plan, but what he says to Bane here and to Evol in the last episode, along with the comlink being planted in the sniper case, seems to confirm that he really did not know Hardeen was Obi-Wan in disguise, and that's when he found out. While the Chancellor definitely knew the whole time. Quite the convoluted plan, but if anyone can make it work, we know Palpatine can. Season 4, Episode 19, Massacre. I like that Grievous is being used more sparingly at this point in the show. It makes it easier for him to be actually scary and threatening, considering he literally wipes out a whole society in this episode. It is a pretty well done, engaging battle sequence that feels tragic. We return to Ventress's story, continuing from Season 3, Episode 14. Defeated and lost, Ventress returns to Mother Talzin and is welcomed back into her old family as a Night Sister, only to immediately lose them all and feel responsible for it. I get why Dooku would seek revenge on the people who almost killed him. It's a strategic move to get rid of such a powerful group of witches that have a known vendetta against him. Mother Talzin in particular has constantly proved herself a force to be reckoned with, for sure. Even compared to the Season 3 Night Sisters arc, this episode has some very dark and creepy content, especially the voodoo doll magic. Now that was intense. Dooku's reaction is really painful and visceral. The other main example is the resurrection spell on the dead Night Sisters, cause if this shot doesn't freak you out at least a little, I'd be surprised. You can debate whether this dark, clearly demonic imagery is worth watching, particularly for younger kids watching the show, but you can't deny that it's consistent with this culture George Lucas created. I'm not personally bothered by it at this point in my life. The Massacre of the Night Sisters is one of the most significant future-changing events that has happened in the show so far, so this is an important episode if only for that reason. Season 4, Episode 20, Bounty. With nowhere to go and no one left to turn to, Ventress makes a visit to the Tatooine Cantina. Nice throwback to A New Hope with this moment. Ventress finds herself thrown into the bounty hunter world, on a team heading to their next job. As I've said before, I don't care about young Boba, but at least he's a little older and much less annoying now. The action in this episode is a little quick and hard to follow. Maybe it's just that I was kinda tired while watching it this time. The lights flashing by don't help. But other than that, train heist action is a classic trope and works for a reason. The purple underground setting is a very cool aesthetic, and the ninja-style martial arts and acrobatics are pretty fun too. However, it's most interesting to watch how Ventress and the bounty hunters react to what, or rather who, they're protecting. I didn't remember the whole plot exactly, so I enjoyed seeing the little twists in Ventress's plan be revealed. She shows that she's still cold and clever enough to take advantage of the situation and to be a good bounty hunter, but she's also had enough character growth to show sympathy toward the captured girl, whose story hits close to home for her. In the end, she lets the girl and her brother escape and makes sure everyone gets their fair share of the credits. I also noticed that she intentionally doesn't kill anyone with her lightsabers the whole time. A decently entertaining episode progressing a good character arc. Season 4, Episode 21, Brothers. Oh boy, you know things are getting serious when you get the red intro for the first time. Along with the fact that Dooku and Ventress and Anakin in the first 5 minutes all sense
Something sinister.
If we're continuing the storyline from Season 3, Episode 14, we have to come back to not just Ventress, but Savage as well. We find him on his mission from Mother Talzin, trying to find his lost brother. And he's definitely not any more stable or less rageful than the last time we saw him. This snake guy is a little weird and goofy, but he did make me laugh. He feels appropriately like a dark fantasy movie type of unreliable guide, I guess. The Scrap Planet is a good new addition to the galaxy and feels impressively fleshed out and immersive in only a few minutes. But here's where things get even more wild, and the suspense really ramps up, cause Darth freaking Maul is back. And I know it doesn't logically make any sense for him to be alive, but he's so cool in this show, it's totally worth it. Once they decided to bring Maul back, it had to be this way though. They went so crazy and disturbing and out there with the tortured creature he's become, and that's the perfect and only way to really suspend disbelief that he's even alive. Cause wow, when you finally do see Maul, he's literally half a trash spider and completely nuts. I get chills every time I watch this episode cause, as I've mentioned, Sam Witwer is amazing. As Savage is trying to understand what happened to Maul, the guy is just raving and muttering cryptic phrases over and over, but when he finally thinks about Obi-Wan and says,
Revenge.
Then he goes still, and you see a glimpse of the real person in those eyes behind the madness on the surface. The fire is also a great image of the burning rage that has been keeping him alive. Those last 5 minutes are by far the best part of this episode. The next episode is all so good though, this one is just the setup. Season 4, Episode 22, Revenge. This season finale starts off crazy and intense right away. Maul muttering as the boxes close in around him with the Force is so ominous. Mother Talzin literally ripping the shadows out of Maul's head is wild. When Maul's mind is restored, everything he says is important for establishing his character and motivations. They actually had a lot of freedom to create Maul's character here, because there was very little to work with from The Phantom Menace. But this phrase seems to be the foundation they started from.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
As Palpatine's apprentice, Maul knew about the war to come long before it began, and he once had great aspirations for his future. Now, he is again driven by revenge, against the one Jedi who robbed him of his destiny. But revenge is only the start, he says, hinting at other aspirations he might have now. Enough about Maul though. This is my most rewatched Clone Wars episode because I'm always so down for quality Obi-Wan content. And what could push his character more than to have the monster who killed his master come back from the dead to literally haunt him? And I love that Obi-Wan is immediately completely willing to go face Maul alone, even when he knows it's a trap, because Maul knows what the Queen of Zygeria also knew. Obi-Wan cannot stand by and let innocent people be hurt or killed, especially if he feels personally responsible, which he obviously does here because look at his face when he sees Maul kill those people in his name. When the two finally meet, that shot of Maul standing above Obi-Wan with only flames behind him is so terrifying and awesome and perfect. Obi-Wan approaches Maul with such bravery and determination, going right into his signature defensive stance. Unfortunately, Savage catches him completely off guard and beats Obi-Wan pretty easily. He was not expecting to fight two crazy powerful Night Brothers, and oh boy does he get beat the heck up again. Bruh, he's been put through the ringer this season. And again, it's actually pretty rough and so gut-wrenching. Amazing voice acting from James Arnold Taylor. And the way he's shaking when Maul and his lightsaber are so up close to his face and Maul is threatening to kill him slowly. Wow, it's all so real and intense. And y'all, I promise it's rare for me to get this immersed in watching anything. And it's animated.
Anything more to say?
I like your new legs. They make you look taller.
This is why I love Obi-Wan so much. Because no matter how hard someone hits him or how many times someone kicks him down, he's gonna drop a witty one-liner and get back up on his feet. However, we can see Obi-Wan is really struggling when Maul mentions his master. The way Obi-Wan does not respond verbally for once, when Maul taunts him about Qui-Gon's death, is actually so telling and emotionally vulnerable compared to the usually calm and composed Obi-Wan we know. Maul even says,
Your rage has unbalanced you. That is not the Jedi way, is it?
I think that moment is so important. You see Obi-Wan really fight back with the same unrestrained emotion as in The Phantom Menace when he's trying to avenge Qui-Gon. But letting fury get the better of him does not work twice, because Maul knows how to predict and manipulate him this time. This climactic lightsaber fight is pretty awesome. Ventress showing up ties this whole 4-episode arc together. The banter between Ventress and Obi-Wan as they fight on the same side for the first time is really funny, and just the right amount of consistent with their previously established dynamic. All the dialogue in this episode is great from everyone.
Kenobi, don't tell me someone's finally knocked the fight out of you.
Well, if that doesn't sum up Obi-Wan's character, I don't know what does. Overall, a pretty flawless episode that really feels like good Star Wars, you know? It's dramatic and intense, yet with humorous dialogue and features some epic lightsaber combat, of course. Now that has to be the longest I've talked about any episode. Okay, I guess I'm done. That was undoubtedly the best season finale so far. What a way to end Season 4. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, do subscribe to follow the rest of the series. Because I'm trying to be really honest in these videos, Season 4 was somehow both way too intense and emotional and also way too much fun for me to talk about. But I'll chill out a lot more in the next season. Maybe. Until then, may the Force be with you.